Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guest with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Kime as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime and I am so excited about our show today, and forgive me, but I think I say that all the time, but I am really excited about our special guest today. Well, our special guest, Jim Riley, has a connection to Enid, and we'll talk with Jim in a moment about that special connection. But he also played football at Enid High School, University of Oklahoma, decided to go play for the Miami Dolphins, was part of the undefeated season in 1972. And then in the 80s, I believe, he, along with his wife, formed a ministry out. It's called Jim Riley Outreach. And so we've got a lot of things to talk about with our special guest today. I'd like to welcome to the Enid Television Network studio, Jim Riley. Jim, welcome back to Enid. Welcome back home for you. It's good to see you. And you notice this good-looking guy with that white kind of hair. You know, that's the only comparison that I think that we have. So, two white-haired guys in the room today. Well, Jim, thanks for stopping by Enid today, and we appreciate you being here. It's good seeing you. Right off the bat, I understand when we visited earlier that you were in Bristow at the time, way back in high school, and Dad got a different job, moved your family this way, and so you came to Enid High School maybe as a junior or something like that.
I was 15 years old, June of 1961, when we moved to Enid from Bristow.
Okay.
We had lived in Bristow for 5 years, so I thought we'd never leave.
Sure.
My dad was an oil field worker, worked for Halliburton Services, and he got a promotion is the reason we came to Enid.
All right.
And I was heartbroken because I had to leave all my friends and all that, and it worked out actually to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
You mentioned that Enid High School football just was a tremendous difference maker in your life. Tell us about that experience.
Playing for Enid was such a privilege for me. In the 60s, as the older people of this town understand, we were extremely, extremely successful. 3 state championships. I was there, my seasons was 1961, 1962. We lost a total of 4 ball games. And my senior year, we lost 2 ball games by a total of 3 points. And that broke our hearts because we really thought state championship was what we were going for. But it was such a fun place to be. It was such a exciting thing because we'd have Plainsman Stadium filled with people every Friday night, and we'd have 5,000-6,000 people go on the road trips with us. So it was a big thing for a lot of people, but especially for us players, the guys who were out there playing. It meant a lot to us to have the people of this community so behind us. You know. So
the move from Bristow to Enid turned out a little bit better than you thought.
Oh, way better than I thought.
Better.
Yeah, way better than I thought. Yes.
Well, if my research serves me correctly, you were recruited out of Enid High School by the legendary coach Bud Wilkinson, and to play at the University of Oklahoma, that small school down at Oklahoma. Right. You became a coach's All-American. And tell us about the experiences of playing football at OU.
Well, OU was my dream. I had been watching OU. My dad went to OU in 1941 as a freshman. Wow. And he was only there until after the first of the year, because on December the 7th of 41, something happened. Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He went to war, never came back to school. He didn't think he could because by that time he was married to my mother. They had just had me. And my dad was my hero. He was an all-state fullback out of Capitol Hill High School.
The Redskins.
Redskins back then. And he was, as he called it, he was a born knobber. That's what they call the Capitol Hill guys. And they were really good when he played there too. And anyway, it was exciting to be able to be a part of something that ever since I was a little child, the Sooners of the 50s, the ones that went 47 in a row, I was a little kid then, but I listened.
Right.
Didn't watch them on TV, listened to them on the radio every Saturday, you know, and that was my dream. And Bud Wilkinson, at that time, I thought he was God. I wasn't sure, you know, that God had anything going on him, you know.
I think a lot of people felt that way.
Oh, I mean, he was something else, and I was extremely honored for him to want me to come and play for the University of Oklahoma. I had a lot of other scholarship offers, but I never took any of them serious.
Yeah.
I knew where I wanted to go from day one.
Our special guest today on City Connections is Jim Riley, former Enid resident, a couple times, I guess you could say that. And I want to say special thanks to Doug France for reintroducing us and making sure that Jim got up here safely to visit with us today. So I appreciate the folks here in Enid reaching out and also reminding us of different people that we need to interview on our show. Let's talk a little bit about your current connection to Enid. I know there's family members here, but Jim, kind of share with us. You still have that strong family connection right here in Enid.
Yes. My mother-in-law, Odie France, 94 years of her, is still here in town, doing wonderfully. My brother-in-law, Doug France, and his wife, Diane, are here. And of course, I've got nephews and nieces and great nieces and nephews all over town. So we're up here a lot. Enid is still home to us.
Sure.
And it's always felt like home to us.
Well, I certainly appreciate Doug reaching out and say, hey, we need to see if you can get Jim on TV and talk about football and Dolphins and connection to Enid and so forth. Jim, we've got this helmet in front of us. It says perfect season on one side. And of course, he has the Miami Dolphin logo. We want to talk a little bit about your role as defensive end with the Dolphins. But let's talk a little bit about this helmet. It says perfect season. There's autographs galore. I see Don Shula. I see Dwight Twilley. I see Bob Greasy. You see all these familiar names. What's this helmet all about?
Every year since the 15th year after the perfect season, which was in 1987, we've been getting together in Miami. They bring us all in, and everybody comes back, and we sign a whole bunch of stuff every 5 years. We even started a company called the Perfect Season Company that each one of us have a share of it. And we can either keep the money or give it to something, you know, give it to a charity or whatever. That's what my wife and I have done with it the last several years. But every 5 years, we sign a whole bunch of this stuff: helmets, jerseys, pictures, team pictures, and also they have these. They make up all sorts of stuff for us to sign, and we spend a whole day, signing stuff, and they take about 8 of us at a time, and we have, I think there's about a 4-hour signing session, and we've got lots of people in there that help us with it and hand us stuff, and we're sitting there with grease pencils writing our name on everything, and they sell this stuff. You know, it's a big deal now. It amazes me. Here I am, 70 years old, been away from football, you know, forever.
You want to say that again? 70?
70 years old.
Well, you're looking good.
Oh, thank you. And I still get 3-4 times a month letters in the mail from fans around the country wanting my signature. They find old pictures of me. And I'm thinking, man, I said, I wonder what the real stars, you know, are getting. Because if they're sending it to me, my goodness. And I come to find out that this paraphernalia has become a real big deal. It wasn't that big a deal when I was playing.
Sure.
We didn't sign that much stuff back then. but we sure do now.
Yeah. So if I find me a helmet, I can get in line and you'll sign it for me?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot. I got you on camera saying that you will. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins. Little history lesson. The Dolphins, I think, first season was in '66.
Yes, sir.
You were drafted to play for the Dolphins in 1967.
Yes.
You spent 6-7 years. You were part of the 1972 perfect season. And for those football aficionados, they probably remember the phrase no-name defense. And you played defensive end for the Dolphins. What have I not shared about your experience?
Well, one of the reasons they called us the no-name defense is they didn't think any of us were very good. We were just sort of, also ran players, and we had come and started with a brand new franchise. And
a new team, no identity.
No. In 1967 was our second year. We won 3 ball games. The next year we won 5 ball games. And the year after that, we won 3 more ball games. So you're talking about 11 wins, in 3 years. And then all of a sudden, they hired a young coach by the name of Don Shula. And George Wilson was our coach beforehand. He's the one that put the team together. And we always tell him that Shula came behind George and really he reaped the profits from that. And because he already had all of us there. Paul Warfield had just gotten traded from Cleveland to us. We had just gotten Marv Fleming, our tight end, we had gotten from Green Bay Packers, had played on those great Packer teams. And all of a sudden, we start winning. And the next 3 years were really good.
And then you have a guy named Earl Morrill. I think he came from the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah.
He shows up at the Dolphins.
Yeah, Earl comes in the 72 season. Greasy goes down the 5th game of the year with a broken ankle.
And that's the perfect season.
That's perfect season. Here comes poor old Earl. He was 40 years old, and he comes hobbling on the field. And I remember the offense, Zonka was one that told me, he said, what are we going to do with this old dude? My goodness, we're done. And of course, Earl went through the rest of the season. Yeah. And then at the end of the season, when the playoffs started, Greasy was well. He comes back in, and they make the run and win the world championship and are with an undefeated season.
Yeah. Well, this is fun stuff. As a kid growing up watching pro football, I love stories like this. Our special guest today on City Connections is Jim Riley. Jim, appreciate you being here today. We want to talk about the Jim Riley Outreach Ministry, and we'll do that right after this break. Stay with us, please. Welcome back to City Connections. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Steve Kime, and my special guest today, Jim Riley. Jim, one more question about the Dolphins, if you will. If you could just kind of do a summary statement of that entire professional football experience with the Dolphins, how could you summarize for folks that remember those glory days, but they would just like to hear straight from you, say, Jim, what was it like to play pro football, and especially for the Dolphins? How would you respond?
Well, when that's all you've ever done since you were in the 2nd grade is play football every fall, you think that's just normal. You think you're supposed to do that.
Right.
I went from grade school to junior high to high school to college, and then I was lucky enough to go to the pros, and I took it for granted that that's just what you do. Mm-hmm. And it was when I got my knee torn up and I knew my career was over with during the 72 season. I knew then that even though this had been a special run for me, it was over.
Wasn't going to last.
It wasn't going to last. There is an end. And I had seen old guys that I had played with before, especially my first couple of years, guys that had gotten their knees hurt and they were still trying to play, and it wasn't a very pretty sight. The guy that I took his place Ed Cook, Big Ed, was a great player, was an all-pro for several years. He was in his 10th year in the league when I was a rookie. And he played defensive end. He was the left defensive end, and then Mel Branch was the right defensive end. And he got hurt in about the third game, and I got to start. And after that, I started until I got hurt. And then Vern Denherter took my place. And that's just the way it goes. You just hand it down. And you take it for the run that it is, and we do take it for granted, though, because we think this is normal, that you're supposed to do all of this. And as I talk to players that played with me in high school and in college, no, you're not supposed to. You were just fortunate enough to get to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a different phase in your life. In 1986, Jim and Robin Riley dedicated their lives to the pursuit of serving others. The Jim Riley Outreach is a 501c3 nonprofit ministry helping individuals and families move into a life of recovery from addiction. Jim, I want to share this quote that I found on your website from Bob Stoops, head football coach, of course, at University of Oklahoma. Bob said this: "It is with great confidence that I support the Jim Riley Outreach ministry. I firmly believe his program is based on the right principles, personal experience, and a genuine commitment to help others." So that's a pretty strong testimonial come from Bob Stoops. The Jim Riley Outreach Ministry, what's it all about?
In 1985, my life changed. I was deep in addiction myself. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug abuser. I'm not proud of it. That's just what I was doing. I had started that stuff when I was playing in the pros. Drugs became a part of my life. In 1982, I said, that's what's making me crazy. It's these drugs. I'm going to stop doing them. So I did, but I didn't stop doing the alcohol. And I was a stone cold alcoholic. In 1985, my wife, thank God, Robin, she stuck with me. We were married in 1968, 1985, 17 years later. She got a bunch of people together. Those people were very, very close to me. My high school football coach, Harvey Griffin, and his wife, Hazel, they were there that morning of July 16th, 1985, in my home in Edmond. Joe Postlick, who played with me here, he was a year behind me and then came to OU and was my roommate for 2 years down there, and one of my best friends. He was there, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law. There was there were 2 engineers that worked for me, my business partner. There were, and then of course, Coach Griffin and them. And Harvey was the first one to come up to me. It was an intervention. Oh yeah, and they had a counselor there that I had no idea who he was, but he'd been working with the family for 3 months, preparing what they called an intervention. Here's how that worked. Harvey Griffin came up to me with tears in his eyes. Coach was one of those guys. He had become a very close friend of mine after I moved back to Enid after I retired from the pros. And Harvey Griffin and Hazel were just like another mother and dad to me. He had tears in his eyes, and he said to me, he said, "Son, first of all, I want to tell you I love you." He said, "You're something special. You're the best I ever had. You're the best I ever coached. But I'm ashamed of what you've become." And he had tears in his eyes, and he couldn't say any more. His wife took over, and she cried all the way through hers and never missed a word. Told me what they saw me doing, and what they wanted me to do is to stop and get some help. A few others said some things, and then my little girl, Marcy Ann, was 11 years old at the time. She came over and she had a piece of paper in her hand that she had jotted down some notes. She couldn't see it because of the tears in her eyes. She dove into my arms. She said, "Daddy, I love you. I don't want you to die. I want you to stop drinking." My son, 15 years old, Blake was at the time, he was next. He come up. I had Marcy in my arms, and he dives on the other side of my chest. "Please, Dad, please do what they want you to do." They sent me to a drug and alcohol center in Arizona. I spent 7 weeks there. my life started to change at that time. Come back home, I got with an aftercare counselor like I told him I would do, and thank goodness I did it. And Dr. Winston Holland was his name, and he became one of my very good friends, my mentor, and my teacher. And in 1986, through his prodding and pushing me, he said, "Do you really like what you do for a living?" I said, "Nope, I sure don't." He said, "You know, I think you'd do really good if you could reach out and help other people. You've got a platform, especially with young athletes and people like that." So I started the Jim Riley Outreach. My wife and I sold my half of the company that I owned to my business partner, and we didn't have much money left, but that's how I started the foundation, is with that money that I got out of the selling of my company to my partner. And we started Jim Riley Outreach, which was only an awareness program. I was going all over the state, all over the country, with the help of the FCA, who were Chuck Bowman and John Odell, good friends of mine.
Sure.
They said, they need to hear what you've got to say. And I had schools all over the state and all over this part of the country asking me to come and speak about addiction. And from awareness, it came from starting to help people one-on-one, because they would call me and I would get with them, and dads and granddads and people like that of these kids that I was talking to.
Sure.
And then it became that I was talking to more than just kids. A lot of companies would call me, and I would go and we would do awareness programs there. From that, and ours was always based on a Christian theme, because in 1986 something happened to me. I became a Christian. I became a follower of God. I'd always believed in God. I just didn't walk in His path. And once that happened, and I did it with an old teammate of mine, Norm Evans, who actually started the NFL chapel programs. He started my rookie year. Norm started it with the Dolphins, and it's spread all over now. All of them have chapel programs. And Norm was a devout Christian man. And in 1986, I called him with a 12-step deal. The ninth step is when you make amends to people you believe you've harmed. And I thought I said some things, and Norm Evans and I knew each other real well, because he played right offensive tackle. I played left defensive end. We bumped heads my whole career. And he was a man's man for sure, I promise you that. And when I told Norm what I had done, he said, "You're doing the ninth step of the 12 steps, aren't you, Jim?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, and he started crying. He said, "Jim Riley, I want to tell you something." He said, "I've been praying for you since 1968. And this was 1986.
Wow.
Since then, Norm and I have become even closer friends. And he invited me to a pro athletes Christian outreach program that he had this was in June of '86. And Robin and I went out to Scottsdale, Arizona. And there was a whole bunch of guys that I had played with, and then some guys that were playing at the time. And that's when Norm set it up for me, because our small group was, well, the guys in that small group, Steve Largent, Norm Evans, Mike Singletary, Mike, the guy who was he was the FCA director of the state of Texas, Dennis Connor. And Norm had it all set up to where, you know, they were all there to minister to me. And it worked out really well. Since that time, I have learned a lot from that program, because I kept going back every year to the conferences and learning more and more. And then Dr. Holland and I, of course, were working together. And I started reaching out to people who had addiction problems. And they started reaching back out to me. And And then a friend of mine from Norman, Dick Liddell, and I started a men's treatment center down in Maud, Oklahoma, a little little place down there in 2000. He sold it in 2003 to a friend, and then in 2009 decided that he wanted to get back into it because his only son died in 2003 from addiction. And as Dick said, the reason, somebody asked him, why are you doing this? Why are you and Jim doing this? He said, I couldn't help my own son. Maybe I can help somebody else's.
I appreciate, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I appreciate you sharing about all these relationships, because we have a mutual friend. When you were a senior at the University of Oklahoma, our mutual friend, Ken Mendenhall, was a freshman at the University of Oklahoma.
Right.
And Ken was here one day, and we were visiting, and Ken shared the significance when he was playing for the Baltimore Colts, the significance of a chaplain, a ball player, fellow ball player that was a mentor, but also this spiritual influence on him. Mm-hmm. So your story, along with Ken's, is probably two of many stories of professional athletes that were introduced to a chaplain or to a fellow team player that really had a tremendous impact. So I appreciate you sharing that.
It didn't take Ken as long to figure it out as it did me. I'm just not very smart. It takes longer for guys like me to do it.
Well, Jim, as I tell people, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma. I graduated in the top 10% of the lower 1/3. Okay. Okay. So maybe that's another thing that we have in common.
Like that.
Jim, before we take another break here, why don't you tell folks how they can reach out to Jim Riley Outreach? It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Tell us about how they can contact you, address, phone number, and things like that.
Well, you've got Jim Riley Outreach at yahoo.com. That is our website. Some people say those actually work. I don't know a whole lot because I'm not much of a computer guy. I don't even do cell phones well. My main number is 405-340-8096. That is the outreach number, which is also in our house because that's where our office is. And it's in my son's old bedroom upstairs. And that's how we do. And we have all sorts of different things that we're doing now, including we've got 5 mentoring programs, 3 men's programs, houses, a women's program, and then one for young girls that my daughter is doing down in Plano, Texas.
Very good. Jim, we want to come back and talk about your son, Blake.
Okay.
But we need to take this short break. Thanks for staying with us today on City Connections. Our special guest, Jim Riley. We'll be back and we'll talk more right after this. Thank you again for staying with us on City Connections. My very special guest today, Jim Riley, no stranger to many of you and Enid. And Jim, by the way, we live stream this interview, so you'll have some of your Dolphin friends from Florida, Texas, all across the country. They'll be able to see this interview due to technology. So I noticed this piece of jewelry that you have on your right hand. I saw Barry Switzer had a Super Bowl ring from the Dallas Cowboys, and that thing looked like a plate as big as it was. That's a pretty good size Super Bowl ring as well. Tell us the story behind that, and I think there's also a special story associated with it.
Yeah, the ring, of course, symbolizes the 1972 season. It sits in a blue sapphire with 16 small diamonds around it and the 17th big diamond in the middle representing Super Bowl 7. And it's got all the Super Bowl 7 perfect season, 17-0. Then it's got our names, and it says the winning edge. That was our slogan that Coach Shula brought with him when we started. And but the thing that on my son's 15th birthday, Blake, I gave that ring to him. And it was when he was a senior at Edmond Memorial High School. I was getting ready to go to Ardmore High School to do a drug and alcohol program. Blake come running downstairs with this ring, and he said, "Dad, I want you to wear my ring when you do programs." And he said, when you're at my football games. Other than that, leave it in the box. I said, "Yes, sir. That's what we'll do." So ever since that time, I have been, I only wear the ring special occasions like this, when I speak to a group or something like that. That's the only time I wear it. And the reason is that it meant so much to him. And my son Blake was killed in a car wreck on October 29th of 1989. He was 20 years old. And I thought that my life had ended that morning when those two Edmond policemen came to my door to tell me my son was dead. I never dreamed I could feel the pain that I felt that morning. And I held Robin and Marcy, my daughter, she was 15 at the time, in my arms, and I told them, I said, "I love you two more than I love life itself, but there's never going to be another day of joy in my life again." That's how I felt at that moment. You say stupid things when you're hurting real bad.
But I think what you told me, it wasn't it the previous night that Blake had left late with some guys to go back to school.
Right.
And so, I mean, it was just the following morning, I guess.
That's when it was. And what happened was, you know, the good part about this whole thing was the day before Blake left to go back to start his two-a-day football practices up at Missouri Southern, where he was going to college, him and I had a meeting on our back porch, which is where we did a lot of our meetings, him and I. He said, "Dad, I want to talk to you about something." I said, "Okay." And we went out on the patio, and he said, "Dad," he said, "I know you worry about me, but you don't need to." He says, "Because I want to make a deal with you tonight, right here." He said, "I promise I'll never touch a drop of alcohol as long as I live, as long as you don't." And I said, "That sounds like a pretty good deal, son." And I got up and I held him in my arms and I hugged him around the neck and I told him how much that meant to me and how much he meant to me. And then he said, "Dad, you know, every man needs a motto to live by." And I said, "Yes." He said, "I know what mine is now." He said, "You remember that summer between my sophomore and junior year in high school when I went up to Stillwater to that FCA summer conference?" I said, "Yes." He said, "There was a young Oklahoma State football player that was a walk-on. He didn't even get to suit up for games. He just got to practice." He said, "Dad, he was our huddle group leader in that FCA 5-day conference that I went to. And he was one of the neatest guys I ever met. And he gave us a motto, and we took it as our motto for our group, and I've taken it as my motto for life." And my son looked me in the eye and he said, "I'd rather be known as a simple man of God than the greatest football player to have ever lived." And when my son said that, I grabbed him around the neck and I held him in my arms and I told him, I said, "There's nothing you could do, there's nothing you could say, there's no honors you could win to make me prouder than I am of you right now." I said, "Here you are 19 years old and you've already become a man. Took me nearly 41 years to get to where you've gotten 19. I said, son, I will never forget this night." And Steve, I've never forgot that night. It's still a special night. And that is my motto. I'd rather be known as a simple man of God than the greatest anything of this world. That's the way I put it.
Well, Jim, thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine how difficult it is to kind of revisit that conversation, but it's an important conversation to share, and I appreciate your courage and willingness to share that. Another thought about Blake. There's a house or a home or a facility in Texas. It's called Blake's House. Quickly, what's that all about?
My daughter and my son-in-law, they wanted to do something to help aged out foster girls coming out of, I have a granddaughter that's 12 years old, Charlie Ann Baser. Marcy had been working with this little girl that's now my granddaughter because she was adopted about a year and a half ago when she was 18 years old by Marcy and Tim and Charlie. They asked her name is Stacy. Said, and she had been in 26 foster homes by the time she was 7 till she was 17. And then she came to live with Marcy and Tim and Charlie. And because of that, my daughter and my son-in-law, they bought a house. They joined us as part of our team, and they take 4 girls in at the same time,
Sure.
at a time. And they all have their own bedroom, because none of them usually ever had their own bedroom. It's a 5-bedroom home in Plano. And my daughter deals with all the problems and they teach these girls how to live a lifestyle they've never lived. And what they have discovered is a lot of them are already into drugs, and they help them get off of that. They help them do what they need to do. Blake's House is what Marcy named it because it is something to give these girls a second chance.
Sure.
And it's a part of our outreach, and we're proud to have it.
Our time has gone so quickly, Jim. And the fact that you come back to visit family means you have that open door invitation to come back. Because it's just gone so quick today, but I know there's so much more that we can talk about. So since you do come back quite often, you know where the studio is, you're going to have to come back and keep us updated. But we have time for one more question. And I was hoping to meet this young lady today, but she didn't make the trip here to the Enid Television studio. But a special young lady in your life named Robin, you know? And my last question, and I think you've told me this in previous conversations, that you owe much, and much is capitalized, to your wife, Robin. Can you kind of share the meaning of that statement, that you owe her much?
You know, when they talk about when you a lot of us marry way over our heads, well,
Yeah.
I definitely did that.
Yeah, can I raise my hand?
Yeah, I think God knew I was going to need a lot of help in this life, so He sent me one of His special angels.
Yeah.
And I met Robin out at Oakwood Country Club when I was on a construction crew, and she's at the swimming pool in the summer of 1966. And literally fell in love with her instantly. We dated that summer. I was going into my senior year of high school. Senior year of college. She was going into her senior year of high school, so I was 4 years older than she was. But I was absolutely mesmerized by Robin Ann. Not only because she's absolutely a beautiful woman, she was absolutely a beautiful girl at the time, but because she had something that just clicked. She was everything I'd ever imagined a woman could be. And it took me a couple of years to figure that out. And so I grabbed her after my rookie year. I came back, was going back to school. She was at OU at the time as a freshman. Well, I let her finish her freshman year, and then I married her and took her to Miami with me. And because of Robin, I'm alive and well and sitting here with you today. Had it not been for her, I'd have never made it. I wouldn't be here. I would have been one of those tragedies. I would have been a person kind of like my little brother, my brother Alan. We didn't talk about him, but he died in 2004 because of addiction. And he was a Enid High football player too, and he went to OU, but he didn't stay. He quit his freshman year and then went to Vietnam, got all messed up, and his life was never the same. But my wife is the one that literally helped change my life because she stuck with me. Now, she was at the end of her rope there. That intervention was the last thing. Had I said no to that, that was it. But thank God I didn't. And she's not only my wife, my lover, and she's also my very best friend. And when she let me do what I did when she helped me start the outreach, she never blinked. And financially, it was nobody thought that was a smart thing to do. Of course, it wasn't smart, it was about a need. It wasn't about being brilliant. I didn't have to worry about that because I'd never been brilliant. And what happened was, because Robin was behind it 100%, and I had to learn something, because I'm working with men. There's no way I'm going to work with women. I don't even understand them yet. And I'm just 70 years old. My dad told me the same thing years ago. He said, I'm 84, son. He said, I don't understand them either, so why should you? But I do know this, is that without her, I'm not here. We're not having this conversation, and a lot of things would have never happened in my life that's happened. And Robin Ann France Riley,
There you go.
is absolutely the most special woman that any man could ever have as a wife and as a friend, because she is my best friend.
Well, Jim, I was really looking forward to our interview and our time today, because I knew the conversation would be to the point, and it'd be frank, and it'd be from the heart. And I just appreciate you sharing that. You got a Super Bowl ring, so what else do you need except a coin from the city of Enid? And Jim, on this coin it says boundless, vibrant, original, and that represents the attitude, the character of the hardworking folks of Enid that make Enid a great community. And on one side it has the Enid logo, and then it has a star, of course, where Enid is located. On behalf of the city of Enid and folks here at the Enid Television Network, we want to present that coin to you. And it's not gold, looks impressive, but we give that to you with much appreciation for you to be here
Thank
today.
you, Steve. Enid, Oklahoma is a special place for me. Always has been, always will be.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to you. And thank you for joining us again on City Connections. And we'll have Jim back. I'm sure that he's got time to come visit with us again, maybe throughout the summer. But we'll keep track of Jim, make sure that he's on the straight and narrow, and we'll get an update from him in the next few months. Thank you again for joining us on City Connections. I'm Steve Kime. Look forward to our next visit. Until that next visit, make it a great day.